bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. How you doing? Today's Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. 247 days into the new year, only 119 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? It is Thursday. It is not Fader night. Tonight, very special guest because this is Egypt Week, night 4. And our guest is Laird Scranton. Of course, Laird was supposed to be with us and was here with us on Monday night. We had a little equipment meltdown here in the studio, which we promptly fixed on Tuesday morning, but Laird so graciously accepted our invitation to come back tonight, Thursday. All right, so Laird is with us, so stand by. He'll be with us at the bottom of the hour. And there you go. It's going to be a great night. We had an amazing week this week. Oh, man. Last night, Youssef Alyan, an extraordinary show, live from Cairo, Egypt, just steps away from the Great Sphinx and the Giza Plateau. And so that was last night. And the night before, Billy Carson. And, of course, the night before that was Laird Scranton, and Laird is back with us tonight. Now, but what was extraordinary for me last night, and I really wanted to, radio is theatrics of the mind. It's theatrics of the mind. And I wanted to paint that picture for you. That Youssef, a few times a week, he wakes up, walks out to his patio, and fires up a live stream of his view of the Giza Plateau. And it's just incredible. You get to see the sun coming up behind the pyramids. It's just amazing. And that's his life. He's right there. So that broadcast last night was from the Great Pyramid, was from the Great Sphinx, right in front of it. What a great vibe. What a great show last night. And carrying on tonight, Laird Scranton is here. We have got a lot of images that we're going to be sharing tonight. And we're going to be discussing the symbology. That's right. The symbology behind the temples, of course, the pyramids and the artwork, the gods. What was the Egyptian culture saying to themselves and preserving for all of us around the world, right? And how did it affect other cultures out there? We're going to go through all of that tonight with Laird. He is the absolute best. So get ready, and that will be coming at the bottom of the hour. We will be launching episodes maybe 3 and 4 of the H Factor this weekend, so get ready for that. If you haven't gone over to our YouTube channel for the Game Changer Network, do that. Subscribe and click on notifications and get ready, because episodes 3, well, I'm saying 3 and 4, it may be one long episode. Maybe it's going to be two shorter ones. Not sure. What was that from? Not sure. Somebody help me out. Idiocracy. That was his name. What's your name? Not sure. He got it tattooed on the tattoo machine. Okay, anyway, I digress. Okay, not sure. Last night, something strange happened. Rita and I mentioned to her, I said, Liza Minnelli was on the screen. I said, Liza Minnelli's mom was, what's her name, right? From The Wizard of Oz. And Rita says, yeah. And Judy Garland. I said, yeah, Judy Garland, right? Wizard of Oz. Not even 10 minutes later, I mean, out of the blue, on TV. Yeah, that's right. Wasn't she Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz? It was word for word. It was bizarre. I just looked at Rita. She's like, just don't say anything. I was like, man, how does that happen? All right. Happened again today, too, during a phone call. It was also very bizarre. Okay, moving on. Tonight, Laird Scranton is here. This weekend, the next episode or episodes of the H Factor are going to launch. Get ready for that. And Carolyn Ford, I want you to go over to EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Check out what she has available for you. Imprinted skulls from Einstein, the ancient skull of knowledge. That's right. Go there now. They're just absolutely amazing. And pick one out. Check out. Use the promo code Jimmy for 10% off of your Crystal Skull order today. All right. We've got an amazing week lined up next week for Fade to Black. Man, and it's Thursday, and normally I leak it, but man, next week is going to be extraordinary. All right, get ready for that. I'm just looking here on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. And Kevin just posted 4 pictures, screen grabs. You guys, can you tell the T-shirt that I'm wearing? Can you tell? Can you tell what the T-shirt is? Check it out. It's the little alien. I got me a little alien T-shirt. That's right. Rachel, Nevada in the house. How cool is that? My Egyptian hieroglyph name is that. That's funny. That is funny. Okay. All right. The sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. You can go and join in there. We have 2 chat rooms open, one over at Spreaker, one at KGRA The Planet. We've got everybody over on YouTube causing trouble. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook. Where else are we? Tune in. Of course, KGRA, Talk, Stream, Live. Hello to everybody out there. And tonight's going to be a great show. Email is Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. All right, let's get straight to the breaking news. Astronomers have discovered a new solar system, the GW, you ready? Orionis. Yep, Orionis system, which contains 3 stars and is located 1,300 light years away from Earth in the Orion constellation. Each star, there's 3 stars in the solar system. Each star has its own ring of planets, with the largest ring on the outside surrounding the inner 2, which are offset, and the planets are running in the other direction at an angle. It's totally amazing to see. And it's a guaranteed off-the-hook sunrise and sunset on one of those planets. Think about that for a second. right? You got an outer ring, you got an inner ring, you got an inner ring, and they're all cockeyed, right? So you have 3 suns, planets running in their own directions. And what are you going to see at sunrise and sunset? Yeah, that is really, 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 really cool. You can check out the press releases on this that are going around right now on the web. Now, I've got news about the new Batman film because Robert Pattinson has tested positive for the coronavirus, causing filming of The Batman, the new film is called, to be halted just days after the studio resumed work outside of London. Warner Brothers would not comment on any individual worker's health, sharing only this statement, quote, a member of the Batman production has tested positive for COVID-19 and is isolating in accordance to established protocols. Filming is temporarily paused, but it has been factually fact-checked. It is Robert Pattinson. The production previously shut down along with most other entertainment industry work back in March when the quarantine lockdown first hit. Pattinson's representatives did not immediately return a request for comment. Now, you may have seen this, maybe not. David Blaine, back in the news, David Blaine just managed to do what, many of us dream of, right? Flying up in the air, holding on to a bunch of balloons. The illusionist floated over the Arizona desert yesterday by holding on to about 50 helium balloons, right? Like this. Except, he wasn't exactly holding on to a rope with one hand, as is in the video. No, he was connected with a body harness. He had safety stuff. He had a cable. He could have been up there with his hand like this, but right. Okay. All right. All of this was revealed when he let go of the rope to put on his parachute, which came down out of the balloons. And it's like, look, Ma, no hands. Suddenly he's not hanging out at anything. Puts on his parachute. Although his initial goal was to reach an altitude of about 18,000 feet, he ended up floating to 24,900 feet, or about 4.7 miles, holy crap, before skydiving and parachuting back to the ground. I like David, don't get me wrong. That Street Magic or whatever that show, that was good. He's got great card hands for sure. This was just, I'm not sure how to put it. This was just a balloon illusion. There you go. Crazier than I am, though. I'd never do it. All right, here we go. Ahead of a slew of new missions to Earth's natural satellite, researchers have detected a bizarre and unexpected anomaly on the lunar surface of the moon. That's right. The airless, liquid, water-free moon is, wait for it, rusting. The puzzle of a discovery, totally crazy, has its roots back in 2008 when the Indian Space Research Organization's Chandrayaan-1 orbiter surveyed the moon's surface and discovered water ice. It wasn't until recently that Shua Lee of the University of Hawaii and his fellow researchers discovered signatures in the data matching iron oxide, hematite, a form of rust that normally requires the presence of both oxygen and water. Now, here's the trippy part. For iron to rust, it needs an oxidizer. But thanks to solar wind from the sun, the lunar surface is bombarded with hydrogen, the exact opposite of an oxidizer, known as a reducer, which adds electrons rather than taking them away from materials it interacts with. So, why is our moon rusting? We don't know. But soon, it won't be called blue or silver. It's going to be called red. Yeah. All right. Let's get over to the crazy news of the day. Facebook has promised to thwart efforts to disrupt the United States presidential elections by prohibiting new political ads a week before the vote and labeling premature victory claims in the hope of stopping civil unrest before it starts. I'm not making this up. The social media behemoth, listen to this, is teaming up with Reuters to flag premature claims of victory and redirect voters to, I'm quoting here, authoritative information about election results, and quote, all of this according to CEO Mark Zuckerberg, as he announced in a post today outlining what are supposed to be the platform's last election-related rule changes. Zuckerberg added that authoritative information from Facebook's Voting Information Center will be situated at the top of the Facebook and Instagram interface almost every day until the election, end quote, including how-to videos on voting by mail and registration deadlines. Instagram is also owned by Facebook, by the way. This is my creepy news story of the day. Well done, Zuck. What a buzzkill. Jeez. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today, Sex Pistols OG Steve Jones. Today is 65. I can't believe what I'm about to say next. But that is Doug Pinnick, bass player and singer of King's X. Today is 70 years old. I can't believe that. Over My Head. One of the greatest songs in rock history right there, Doug Pinnick. Happy birthday, 70 years old. Man, Over My Head. I tried to learn Over My Head back in the day, and it's such, it sounds so simple, but it is a complicated timing and groove thing, and he makes it sound so easy, right? Doug Pinnick. Thin Lizzy founding member and guitarist Eric Bell today is 73 years old. Our dead guy's birthday today is Freddie King, 1934 to 1976, died at the age of 42. Freddie recorded several hits for Federal Records back in the 1960s. His soulful and powerful voice and distinctive guitar style inspired many musicians and guitarists, including myself. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2012. Nearly constant touring took its toll on King. He was on the road almost 300 days out of the year. In 1976, his health quickly deteriorated, and he died on December 28th of complications from stomach ulcers and acute pancreatitis at the age of 42. Pancreatitis, I should say. Unbelievable. Wow. Just incredible. Incredible voice, incredible guitar player. He had that Texas blues thing, but he combined it with Chicago. Did it so well. So well. All right. On this day in history, 1777, the Stars and Stripes, the American flag, flies for the first time during a Revolutionary War skirmish at Cooch's Bridge in Delaware. Fader fact. Yeah, I love doing this. Argentina invaded the British island of Southern Thule in 1976. The island was uninhabited and is so remote that the British weren't aware of the invasion for over a month. That's right. And then a few months later, the Brits showed up, replaced the flag, and left. And that is your Fader fact. Yeah, all right. Tonight, Laird Scranton is here. I'm going to hit this River Moon coffee, and I got something to say. Here we go. rivermooncoffee.com. I like my coffee, Doc. I do. rivermooncoffee.com. Fade to Black blend. All right. As we wind down another Egypt week here on Fade to Black, it seems that I always come back to the same general conclusion. What would humanity the world be like today if Egypt had continued their progress on all fronts? Technology, art, government, math, and science. Where would we be today? You see, from 3000 BC to 2000 BC, they were firing on all cylinders. Almost out of the gate, at the very beginning, they were a fully upright and functioning society. By 1500 BC, things started to decline. 1,000 years later, yes, 1,000 years, we see the rise of Greece in 660 BC. Rome was still a collection of mud huts at this point. It would be another 200 years before the real Rome started to form. As great as Greece and Rome would become, they only eclipsed what Egypt was able to do nearly 2,000 years before. Think about that. So once again, it's just simple math. You see, from the death of Cleopatra to now, that's about 2,000 years. We all know what happened during that time. And it was the last 200-year period where most of that magic happened. The steam engine, the Industrial Revolution, electricity, flight, jet engines, and the atomic age. Well, and of course, we got Van Halen, too, as well. Want to throw that in there. What if Egypt was able to run its course, to continue? Would we have gone to the moon 1,000 years ago, or even earlier? Egypt fell apart. So did Greece. So did Rome. And then the Dark Ages gripped the earth. Between the fall of ancient Rome in 476 AD and the beginning of the 14th century, Europeans made few advances in science and art. There was little or no regard for Greek and Roman philosophies, and learning anything about Egypt, it was impossible because Egypt was all but forgotten. It was definitely a hard reset. That's right, the Dark Ages. It was a do-over. But that do-over took 1,000 years to get back where we were at 1500 BC in Egypt. You need to think about that. It wasn't until the Renaissance when things started to get back on track. So I ask you, where would we be today if Egypt kept the ball rolling? The answer is a simple one. Where will we be in 1,000 years? Right? Time travel, conquered. Faster than light tech, answered and done. Colonizing the Milky Way. All you got to do is just book your tickets. That's where we would be today. We were that close. This time around, we need to learn. We need to learn from all of our lessons in the past. We can't make the same mistakes again. We can't afford another Dark Ages. And you know the old saying, right? All great civilizations fail. This is the key thing right there. This is the key thing that Egypt taught us, which is, hey, dudes, don't let what happened to us happen to you. We are on the very edge of discovering everything. We are here. We truly are right now. And once again, we are doing everything in our power to blow it. It's like we're predestined to just screw things up. It really makes you wonder. You know, and if you think about it, if you really think about it, and this is my polluted mind. This is how my brain works. Because I can only imagine that there will be a history class in a few thousand years from now. And the teacher's going to step up in front of everybody and go, okay, class, all right, here we go. In today's lesson, we'll talk about the Dark Ages that started in 2020 and lasted for about 1,000 years. That's what's going to happen. Will we be the next civilization to fail? Now, I'm going to say it now. You've been warned. Seriously, you've been warned. You know, we hear about it, you know, time and time again. And we're forced into looking at the United States and going, hey, you know what, man, no, it's too cool here. We've got it so together. It's just going to last forever. You know what? The USSR thought the same thing. And so did Greece. So did Rome. And certainly so did Egypt. Need to think about that. Portugal, Spain. You need to think about that. The United Kingdom. Need to really, really think about that. Are we setting ourselves up? All you have to do is realize and admit the past and know that we could actually right now screw things up royally. And we can't. We're so close. Had Egypt stayed on track, kept the ball rolling, where would we be today? It's amazing, isn't it? I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Tonight on this program, Laird Scranton. Laird Scranton, we're going to be talking about all of the things Egypt that involve symbology of the temples, the sites, the gods, and the artwork of ancient Egypt. All that and much more. We got a great presentation laid out for you. Got some great images. Got some movies. Got some things ready to go. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Simple. All right? All right, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with me. We'll be right back.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Laird Scranton. That's right. It's night 4. It was supposed to be night 3. He was supposed to be night 1. I don't know, man. I don't know. But Laird accepted our invitation to come back and do a do-over. That's right. Tonight is night 4 of our Egypt week here on Fade to Black. We're going to be discussing with Laird the symbology of the temples, the sites, the gods, and the artwork of ancient Egypt. Laird is an independent software designer who became interested in Dogon mythology and symbolism back in the early 1990s. He has studied ancient myth, language, and cosmology since 1997 and has been a lecturer at Colgate University. His work includes articles published in the University of Chicago's Anthropology News academic journal, in Temple University's Encyclopedia of African Religion, and in the Vassar Quarterly Magazine. His book, The Science of the Dogon, was taught at Colgate University under the title Hidden Meanings, a study of the founding symbols of civilization. He has been interviewed on a variety of radio programs around the world, including Coast to Coast AM and Fade to Black, and is a featured speaker on ancient mysteries. He has also appeared, and I say it all the time, one of the greatest documentary series ever, John Anthony West, Magical Egypt. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black for our do-over, Laird Scranton. Laird, once again, good evening. How are you?
Hey, Jimmy, I'm doing good. I'm very glad you managed to get your technical issues solved.
What? You know, this is in a strange way. You know, that's live radio, Laird. That's just live radio. And I tried to hold it together. This is like, I tried to hold it together, and technical snafus here are rare, but they do happen. And it happened right when you and I were just hitting our stride. So there you go. So you know what that it gives me a chance to do?
What's that?
I get to ask the same question again and see if you give the same answer.
I get a do-over on how I answer it.
Yeah. Which is this? And it's a really simple question. And I think that all of us think about this. What is it about Egypt that grabs our imagination? Why are we so attracted to all things Egypt?
Well, from the perspective of the traditions that I study, the Dogons say that their teachers were concerned about how to attract humanity to knowledge. They understood that people don't learn things easily. As a matter of fact, the Dogon say that trying to instruct somebody is like trying to tug on wild grass. It tugs back. And they actually refer to themselves jokingly as wild grass because they understand that's the nature of knowledge. So ancient Egypt does some really interesting things in that it presents such an abiding mystery that humans can't look away from it. That over a period of how many centuries now has ancient Egypt attracted the focus and attention of people all over the world, high-level academics and any major figure in the 1800s was interested in ancient Egypt. Anyone who ever went on a tour of ancient Egypt or of modern Egypt with my friend John Anthony West came away a changed person.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And there is, and when we're talking about the symbology, I think that there is something there. We're going to be discussing all of this tonight, of course, but symbology works at a few different levels. You may be attracted to a face or art or a doorway because of its aesthetic value, right? Okay,
right.
That's one impact. Then there's the subconscious, where your brain is working in the background on what you are viewing, and then possibly making sense of that later, and you don't even know that that's going on, do you?
Right. I mean, the subliminal level is something really interesting. Another thing that people have played with over the decades is on what levels can knowledge be communicated or actions induced subliminally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like software.
Right. And the ancient Egyptians were just masters at it in every way. I remember sitting on a panel discussion one time, and the question was asked of John Anthony West, Robert Bauval, and a number of other people about, why do you suppose the ancient Egyptians built with massive stones? And Bauval answered the question from the perspective of an engineer. He said, look, an engineer works with a material because he can. That there's some advantage in working with larger. There must have been some advantage mechanically in working with larger stones in ancient times. John's point of view was they do it for effect. That you could have exactly the same temple structure built out of everyday bricks, and it would not have anywhere close to the same effect as a temple structure built out of 700-ton blocks. That it has an impact on just being there in that space has an impact on the person who's standing there.
And what did you say?
Well, I have a more complicated point of view because I see interactions from the non-material, and I see those interactions being connected to a slowing time frame. And I can imagine seeing a progression from early Egypt to later times of a decreasing size of these blocks, that it's thinkable that someone on the non-material side could only access a minimum size because of relationships of time. That in what took them a second, the smallest possible moment they could take action in,
mm-hmm.
the smallest chunk they could grab was 700 tons.
Wow, that's heavy. Oh, no pun intended.
So over
that's
time,
heavy.
as those time frames shift, as Buddhism implies that they do, that it could be that that assistance or those influences were able to grab smaller chunks, progressively smaller chunks, and so the structures suddenly were being built with smaller and smaller blocks.
I'm so interested in knowing from my guest when they first had contact with these subjects. And tonight we're talking about Egypt. Do you remember the first time that you saw something Egyptian and what that was and its effect on you?
I remember the earliest memory I have of being aware of ancient symbolism was there was an annual art fair at a art gallery across the street from where I lived in Salem, Oregon. There's a park that every summer would hold an art fair, and my siblings and I would man tables at the art fair, and there was a vase with Greek symbols all over it, and I was fascinated by that. I remember that was my first introduction. Ancient Egypt is a little trickier. I don't have a clear image of the first time I was aware of Egyptian symbols or symbolism, or the first time they became important. But it seems like they've been there all the time. You can't grow up in this world without being aware of ancient Egypt.
Yeah, and for me, it was The Mummy with Boris Karloff.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's pretty pivotal.
Yeah, it was for all of us, right? But do you remember his name in the movie?
No, I knew it once, and I can't call it off the top of my head right now.
He was Imhotep.
Imhotep.
Yeah, the architect.
Right.
And so that's pretty interesting in itself. But that allowed me to go, and I was young, I'm 5, 6 years old, but I'm trying to figure out mummies in Egypt and things, and it started me on my path. But then there was something else that I think really, aside from the Roaring '20s and that period of Egypt art and flair that grabbed the entire planet, right? Everybody was dressing and driving and fixing up their homes, building buildings with Egyptian motifs. But it was in the middle of the '70s when King Tut's exhibit came to the United States in the middle of that world tour. And I remember, and everywhere was, the gold coffin, the face. And you looked at that, and I was probably 10 years old when that was happening. But you look at that, and especially at my age, and you just think to yourself, that's impossible. It's impossible to make something that beautiful. Today, yesterday, or 5,000 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's impossible to make something that perfect. But the Egyptians did, and they did it so long ago. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the most perfect examples are from the earliest periods in Egypt. Things degraded over time. I went to an art museum exhibit of early Egyptian artifacts with John Anthony West back in the 2000s, and there were examples there of things that we can't explain. Stone vases carved in a way so that the interior of the vase was, the neck of the vase was narrower than the interior was. What kind of a tool, using ultra hard materials, stone materials, could they have used to carve that out in a perfect fashion? An artifact that hasn't been repeated in later eras of Egypt.
Yeah, and we were talking about those last night on the show, and John Anthony West brought this up so many times, and it's really a simple fact. The pyramids are incredible. They are. The ancient sites around Egypt are incredible, but probably equally as incredible are those stone vases, as equally as impactful, because they are impossible to make. And this is the thing. They made them by the tens of thousands. They're everywhere. So obviously, whether it was, marble or granite or diorite, these impossible stones, basalt, to carve out of, it was easy for them. And they were perfect.
And then somehow knowledge degraded after that over time.
How do you explain that? And probably a more important question is, where would we be today, Laird, if Egypt was allowed to continue their rise with technology and art and science? Would we have been on the moon 1,000 years ago?
I don't really think so. It's clear to me that someone in ancient times had deep knowledge of science. We can see it demonstrated in a lot of different ways. The problem is, from an academic point of view, there's no viable candidate for that. There's nobody that we can propose as the conveyors of that knowledge that anybody in an academic position is going to accept. There's no answer to that question that meets modern academic standards. John was the one who would rail against the idea. We were presented in our educational system with the idea that humanity has been an ongoing progression from poorer to better, to less intelligent to more intelligent, unbroken progression since ancient times, and we're the pinnacle of that learning. But that's completely the opposite of what we actually see when we dig down into it and we pay attention to it.
I would argue
very
that.
Perfect first.
Yeah, I would argue that point with John. It's an interesting take, and he's not with us, and I almost feel like I should be struck by lightning just by saying something like that. But
no.
But when we consider the rise and fall of different civilizations around the world throughout history, we can certainly see that, and it's documented. But between 1500 BC, which was the beginning of the decline of Egypt, all the way through to the Dark Ages, it took that long for everything to recover. And during that time, Greece falls, Rome falls. Then we go into the Dark Ages, and it's not until the Renaissance until we got our feet back on the ground.
Right, that's right. And we certainly have seen progress since then. But the kind of example that I'm talking about is Socrates felt, like the Dogon do, that written language was a decline from oral tradition, from spoken language. The Dogon have deliberately not adopted a written language because they look down their noses at it. They say this is a way of misrepresenting information, that the person you want to learn from is the expert in the subject. Imagine if you wanted to learn how to bind leather-bound books, and you had a choice between learning it out of a book or learning it off the internet or learning it directly from the person who had been doing it for 30 years.
Right.
This is sort of the apprentice system that trained people, master craftspeople for centuries.
But
once we lost that apprentice system, then suddenly craftsmanship goes downhill.
Yeah, that's true. But that would be hard to apply in something like physics, right? Chemistry.
Right. Well, but still, you want to be learning at the feet of the person who truly understands the subject.
Right.
I was one of the early male co-eds at Vassar College, and one of the philosophies that pervaded that college when I was there was, when you want to know something, when you have a problem you need to solve, go to the person at the top who thoroughly understands it and has the authority to solve it for you. And so during my early work with the Dogon symbolism, I was looking for some astronomer who had knowledge of African sky lore. And so it occurred to me that one of the alumni I had access to from Vassar College was a woman named Vera Rubin, who discovered dark matter, or she helped discover dark matter. And I had her email address, I had her phone number, I had her address, so I contacted her and I asked her if she could to help me with that, and she put me in contact with Thebe Mudepe, a South African astronomer who was very well versed in African sky lore. He's also been instrumental in trying to preserve ancient texts in Mali during the upheaval, the military upheaval there.
Well, if we back up for a second, staying on the same path, of course, but if we can mark in the timeline, and it's pretty well documented, 1550 BC to around 1600 BC, heading out of the Middle and New Kingdom and into the next phase of the dynastic situation there in Egypt. That's where the decline started. Was that something that was out of Egypt's control?
I think it was. I think that clearly relates to planetary upheaval that happened at that moment. There are all sorts of scientific effects that have been measured at about that boundary. Looks like it's connected with the massive eruption of the volcano at Thera, Santorini. All sorts of things happen. There's a major fluctuation in the magnetic field of the Earth. There's major climate change. There's changes, according to ancient Egypt, that may be one of the periods where the Egyptians talk about the sun rising where it formerly set. So you have the implication of possible change in tilt of the axis of the Earth at some point. So major things were going on at that period that I think were completely beyond Egypt's control.
Well, and there's a philosophical bent to this too as well, which is in the military, where you had the Hittites and you had Persians and of course later the Greeks and the Romans, but it was a constant change of attitude in Egypt, where they went from a relatively peaceful society that didn't really think about war or invading another country. They were focused on religion and personal growth, art, and of course agriculture and government and religion and their gods, but they were focused on the self. And suddenly they had to focus on getting these invasion forces back out of the country, in which some cases took hundreds of years, and that would stall growth, wouldn't it, of knowledge and technology, where they had to change their attitude there.
Right. Clearly, they were distracted with other things.
Yeah. And it took, this is what I find interesting, and then we're going to back up and start looking at, we're going to start with Göbekli Tepe, is that we're talking about a time span here that most people don't really understand. We are talking about thousands of years, right? Where, if you start at 3000 BC and you go to Cleopatra, that's a 3,000. The United States is 250 years old, right?
Right.
Just 200.
Now, and it's even a wider span than that, because if we accept, or at least entertain the idea, Robert Bauval's idea that the three large pyramids at Giza point to the belt stars of Orion at 10,000 BC.
That's right.
Or the idea that the Sphinx then faced the constellation of Leo in that same era. A researcher like me only has two choices in entertaining that idea. One is that the alignments were placed at 10,000 BC, when they could actually see those astronomical bodies in the places they were supposed to be. Or the other is that at some later period, someone had the capability of retrospectively calculating what the alignment should have been, which is something I don't really buy. I don't see evidence that anybody was in a position to calculate that. So my best guess is that at least those placements were set at 10,000 BC, which means the Egyptian history goes back at least that far.
Well, what do we do with that? Because I try to be a little bit sensible here in discussing this. In other words, not going too far outside of the box. I don't respect the dogma. I don't. But I have to base everything on something, because when somebody hears my statements, they're going to go back and do their own research and look at timelines.
Right.
Certainly, we know that at 3000 BC, the Egyptians rolled out of the desert completely upright and complete, right? And that doesn't happen on its own, but we kind of have to leave that to the side. Or should we start to think and speak about this in other terms?
Well, the broad perspective I'm working from comes out of Samkhya, which is a foundational philosophy of creation traditions in India, and it looks to me as if it is at the bottom of the Dogon tradition also. The Dogon and the Buddhists talk about eras of instruction, where humanity was deliberately taught. The Dogon say there was intentional instruction of a civilizing plan for humanity that was tagged to a symbolic cosmology. And I can see one era of instruction at Göbekli Tepe around 10,000 BC, and another era of instruction many thousands of years later in northern Scotland on Orkney Island around 3200 BC. And immediately following that 3200 era of instruction, we see agriculturally based kingships arise against a backdrop of what looks like no history all around the world. We see it in Egypt, in society that one of the ancient names given to it was Taru. We see it in China, called Iru. We see it in Ireland, called Aru, and we see it in South America, called Teru. And these are terms, these are phonetic values that in the cosmological terminology refer to cardinal points, the four cardinal points. They also refer to four progressive stages of agriculture. So there's a perspective to think that the reason Egypt hit the ground running at 3000 BC is because someone, as in China, as in Ireland, and as in South America, had been deliberately instructed and had the capability to hit the ground running.
And is it Göbekli Tepe that gives you the freedom to go there? I mean, without Göbekli Tepe, do we even have this discussion?
Well, we do, because the evidence on Orkney is so compelling, and there are other places besides Orkney. that I'll talk about in an upcoming book. I have a book that I plan to self-publish towards the end of this year that traces how the Orkney tradition arose from the Göbekli Tepe tradition. But in sorting that out, all sorts of other pieces fall into place for other cultures and other mysteries.
Does that timeline fall in between 3000 BC and the beginning of the kings of Egypt, and 10,000 BC or 12,000, 7,000 years earlier than Giza? Right.
Well, the path that I'm pursuing in this next book ranges from around 10,000 BC to around 2600 BC.
Right. Fascinating. And like I said, we need to start, talking about things in these terms. Clearly, and we can thank Robert Schock and John Anthony West for this, though, because they're dust up, right? They're dust up with the geologists and Egyptologists back in 1992, where the statements were made at the press conference. Show us anything before Egypt, and then we can talk about it. But until then, right?
That's right. The Göbekli Tepe site absolutely knocked the slats out of that argument.
That's it.
Yes. And it's not just Göbekli Tepe. There are other sites contemporaneous with Göbekli Tepe. There's one at Mardin, which is located not too far from Göbekli Tepe, that actually has features in common with the Orkney, the later Orkney tradition.
And there's now Bonkuklu Tarla, which, again, is very close to Göbekli Tepe. And I've looked at as much as I can out there on the web. This is something that is just now starting to get out there. But that's about it's older than Göbekli Tepe, and it's just as intriguing. It is a beautiful site, and it's right there, and it wasn't supposed to exist.
Right. And they don't really know why it exists. I mean, the structures they see at Göbekli Tepe predate the first evidence they have for the tools that were needed to build it.
By 7,000 years, by the way.
Well, by a period of, at least a period of time, that the site is inexplicable to them. There should be a progression. Of course, it could just be that we haven't uncovered it yet, but there should be. We would expect to see a progression of development before those Göbekli Tepe region sites that so far we don't see.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Laird Scranton. When we come back, you ask for it, you're going to get it. When we come back, we're going to discuss purses. Louis Vuitton, Hermes, right? Right, Laird?
Yes, that's right.
We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of fade to black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black, night 4 of our Egypt week here on Fade to Black. My favorite thing to talk about. And that person to talk about it with is Laird Scranton. Laird is with us tonight. And now I have posted up 4 images that Laird has sent us, and they're right there in the Twitter feed. If you want to see them, follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio, hashtag F2B, and they'll pop up right there. And we're going to be talking about purses. Yes. And a subject that has been discussed many times on the show because, quite frankly, Laird, everybody sees them. We haven't really been able to figure out what is going on. Let's actually start here with image number 1 is a drawing. And let's start there. It's examples of what?
Well, actually, let's move forward to the second image because that's really in time where we want to start.
Okay, with Göbekli Tepe.
That's at Göbekli Tepe.
Okay.
Now, one of the big difficulties with trying to talk about Göbekli Tepe is 10,000 BC is like 7,000 years before the first written text. So there's no way in that era for anybody to have passed along to us a definitive statement of what they meant by anything. So we're having to guess about it. But in that era, the way the symbolic system works is they confirm meaning by saying the same thing over and over again in different ways. And that's what we see at Göbekli Tepe. We see one concept being repeated again and again and again in different symbolic ways. Now, the concept relates to the idea of a sanctuary. And a sanctuary, in sort of the root definition of a sanctuary, cosmologically, is a place where non-materiality and materiality come together. Now, there are different metaphors that are used associated with non-materiality and materiality.
Yeah, let's stay right there. Let's stay right there for a second and clearly define what you're referring to.
Okay. Circularity is associated with the non-material in many different ancient cultures. That a figure of a circle, a geometric figure of a circle, implies non-materiality when we're talking about ancient symbolism. The figure of a square is associated with materiality. Now, if you want to understand why, a circle is a one-sided figure and non-materiality is associated with unity. A figure of a square is a four-sided figure and materiality is associated with four dimensions.
Okay, so non-materiality is what?
That's a complicated question. The idea, Samkhya says universes form in pairs, and that one of them is non-material and the other one is material. That basically concepts of physics and time and matter that we experience happen in a different way non-materially than materially. So a sanctuary is a place, okay, Samkhya says that there's a cycle of energy that flows from non-materiality to materiality and back again. It's a cycle like a year is a cycle. The Dogon compare it to the water cycle on the earth where water evaporates and rises up, forms clouds that rise up over the mountains that create rain that flow back to the sea. If you didn't have that cycle, you wouldn't have life on the earth.
So
the Dogon,
non-material you can't touch and material you can touch.
Right. And Samkhya says non-materiality has perfect knowledge but no ability to act. And materiality has imperfect knowledge with full ability to act.
Got it.
And so there are routine attempts being made to induce actions and convey knowledge, from the non-material to the material as part of the cycle of energy. Okay, so now a sanctuary is the place where those two domains are supposed to come together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one way of representing that is by squaring a circle. That you can reconcile the idea of those two domains by finding a way to combine a square with a circle. And that's what the three handbag shapes do at the Göbekli Tepe pillar here, as we see.
See,
now,
I just see a purse holding something, but that is not the case.
That also is the case. There are multiple levels to this. There's also reasons why the Dogon cosmology is called the basket cosmology and why baskets are associated with knowledge. If you go to the Maori tradition much later, there's a myth of a departmental god named Tane who ascends to the gods and returns back with three baskets of knowledge.
Now, going back directly to this particular pillar at Göbekli Tepe that everybody can go and see right now in the Twitter feed, we've got the three, what we're calling purses on the top of the pillar. But you just mentioned the circle, right? The non-material. That is also there being held up by a buzzard, it looks like.
And we'll get back to that a little bit later about what the symbolism of that is, because it's also pertinent, but is not immediately pertinent to what we're talking about.
Gotcha.
Okay, now, these three, you can see that these handbags create three dome shapes. Well, in the era shortly after Göbekli Tepe in the region of Iraq, three domes were an icon for a sanctuary site called Chaityas. That was a characteristic that defined them. That if you were to go and dig one up and look at the remains of it, archaeologists understand that these were dome structures that defined these sanctuaries. So that's the outlook to begin with. Now, if we back up to the first image that you have here, what we're looking at are the earliest forms of shrines in ancient Egypt. At the bottom left, we see a structure that's really a wicker structure. It's a portable shrine called a seh, S-E-H, and it combines that same circular top with a squared bottom. It was used to house icons. In other traditions, ancient China, ancient Japan, there were certain religious icons that were so secretive they were only allowed to be housed in portable shrines that could be moved quickly.
Now, is this an aha moment? Right? Yeah, because I'm looking at these and I'm just like going, aha. Right? I see it. I see it. Is this do we connect these directly? Is one representing the other?
They come. Okay. The mindset we have to work from is a deliberately formulated and instructed symbolic tradition in ancient times that virtually every later religious tradition or symbolic tradition or creation tradition descends from. They all had the same original teachers. They were all being taught to a single plan, and that's why they all look so similar to us right now. It's not that the Sumerians or the Maori got it from the Sumerians.
Mm-hmm.
It's that they were all instructed in the same tradition by the same group of teachers. The same way you and I might have had the same math teacher in high school, but maybe years apart from each other.
Right, right. So what we are suggesting here, going back to Göbekli Tepe, that the same teachers, the same knowledge, the same source, the same progenitor.
Right. Now, the Buddhists say the first time knowledge was passed to humanity by a Buddha, it happened at a mythical site called Vulture Peak. And Vulture Peak is a perfect name to describe Göbekli Tepe. There are lots of representations of vultures there.
Yeah, they're all over. Yeah.
They also know that sky burials were happening there, which was a burial tradition that began with leaving the deceased body out to be naturally denuded, defleshed by birds of prey and natural elements. If we go back to this first image that we're looking at, the Seh image, we see the wicker shrine on the bottom left.
Right.
If we go up to the middle row, all the way to the right in the middle row, you see the little hemisphere shape in the middle of that. These are miniatures that we're looking at, miniature representations of Sehs.
Mm-hmm.
We see this, what's essentially the same as the Göbekli Tepe figure, the handbag figure, sitting there with the little hemisphere.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's just right there. It's right there. And let me ask you this. When you first started to see the images of Göbekli Tepe, did you, when you started to see these handbag, icons or whatever you want to call them, did you immediately go to Seh? Were you thinking shrine?
No, actually, I had no idea originally what I was looking at. The reason I started even looking at it was because John Anthony West and Robert Schoch were talking about going to Göbekli Tepe. And the night before they left, they decided to hold a party at John Anthony West's house, a sort of a going-away party for them. And my wife, Risa, and I were invited. So I thought, if I'm going to be going down there talking with them about Göbekli Tepe, I should at least have a little bit of knowledge about what I'm talking about.
Right.
So I did some research, and I noticed all the animals carved, the figures of animals carved on the pillars. And quite a few of those animals are animals that carry symbolic meaning for the Dogon tradition. And I thought, well, it looks to me like these might be cosmological in nature. But there were a couple of animals that weren't familiar to me. They weren't part of the tradition as the way the Dogon express it. And I thought, what's going on with these animals that I don't recognize? Well, then I realized that the further back in time we go, the more commonality of language we have. That the word tepe, if you go to a modern Turkish dictionary, the word tepe carries about 25 different meanings. However, if you pick up an Egyptian hieroglyphic dictionary, you'll see a dozen of those, a full dozen of those same meanings associated with the same phonetic, tep or tepe.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that there was language in common, that when the Egyptians were talking about tepe, they meant the same thing the ancient Turks must have meant. So I started looking up the names of these animals in the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary and realized that the animal names were all pronounced the same as important cosmological terms. Even the animals I didn't recognize, the name of the animal, if you spoke the name, it's a homonym for a cosmological term. So at the same time you're saying the name, you're saying some concept that relates to concepts of creation. And so I came away from that realizing that we had a connection to the cosmology there that I could argue persuasively to John and to Robert. It wasn't until much later that I understood about the concept of the Se. Now, the Se, as it turns out, was a pattern for a certain lineage of ancient Egyptian shrines. This was the first incarnation of it, but it extended forward in ancient Egypt. This is one of the families of shrines that we have to concern ourselves with in Egypt.
Now, did the Se originate as far back as Mene? Are we talking about, the beginning of that dynastic period, or was it before?
As my understanding is that this was the earliest form of traditional ancient Egyptian shrine. Before they were building them out of stone, before the average person was involved with stone-built shrines, that this was the sort of shrine that your average person could have a connection to.
Right. Fascinating.
Because if you're not a pharaoh, you're probably not dealing with the temples.
And then, of course, is there a connection? I don't know if it would be etymology or not, but of course we have one of the most famous things that we can talk about ancient Egypt, which is Zep-Tepi. Is there a connection?
Yes, from my point of view, there absolutely is. Now, one of the ways I can make the connection is because there's an archaic Egyptian hieroglyphic word for the region of Cappadocia where Göbekli Tepe is. Cappadocia is the Greek term for that region. The ancient Egyptians called it Get Pet Kai. However, that's an archaic pronunciation of these glyphs. You can also reinterpret those glyphs using a modern pronunciation, and then it translates as Het Pet Kaya.
Really?
Now, I know Pet was an Egyptian god of space.
That's right.
Ka was an Egyptian god that represented the concept of an embrace between universes. And Yah was the Hebrew god for light. Het is a term that means shrine or sanctuary. So that Egyptian word for that region reads literally sanctuary of space embracing light, which is the definition of a sanctuary cosmologically. It's non-materiality connected in an embrace with materiality.
The Fadernauts right now, the audience is like, aha! Right? That's exactly. They're listening to you, Laird. They're listening.
Well, this concept of the two energies coming together is expressed a half a dozen different ways at Göbekli Tepe in ways that we're familiar with. We see the two arms that come down the sides of the pillar, the hands wrap around the end of the pillar.
Right.
That represents the concept of an embrace. And in the Egyptian hieroglyphic language, there's a word for embrace that also means pillar.
Now, let's go to, actually, that's a good segue, and I'm looking at the clock. Let's get to image 3 and 4 if we're going to go to the embrace. Which one do you want to do first? You want to go Buddha, or you want to go Ganesha?
Okay. The Buddhist shrine, we can see a similar representation, except that it's rounded, of the handbag type concept. I wanted to include that just as sort of a footnote that, by the way, these same concepts extend in other traditions besides Egypt and Göbekli Tepe.
I see
we
it.
actually eventually find it everywhere.
Yep, I see it. I'm going to be seeing it everywhere now, too. Thank you for that.
Also, the Buddhist shrine, the stupa here, from my point of view, is a later era structure. The Dogon have a version of the stupa that is an archaic version. And somewhere midway through this process, actually around 3600 BC, we start seeing symbolic reversals, that what used to be matriarchal now becomes patriarchal, and what used to be oral tradition becomes written tradition. What used to be one sort of burial ritual becomes a second burial ritual, and things like that. So the Buddhists, where the Dogon have a round base and a squared top, the Buddhists have a square base and a rounded top.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a point to sort of tuck away that these reversals happen cross-culturally all around the same time. Okay, the fourth image is a Hindu image, and I just wanted to show that connected with Ganesha, the elephant god who rides on the back of a mouse or a rat, that we're seeing a similar sort of shape here. The rounded top and the squared bottom is reminiscent of that same handbag.
Now, I'm not going to make light of this. I'm not, because this research is important. But what about modern symbology today? Like the McDonald's Golden Arches, right? If you you know what I mean, or other logos and things that we see in popular culture. Right. Should we take a second look at those? And it may be accidental, right? The artist didn't know, but the symbology is already part of our DNA that goes back thousands of years.
Well, this is very tenacious symbolism. I'll ask a stranger, what do you suppose an owl represents? And very often they'll say an owl represents knowledge. And I say to them, you just repeated to me at least 5,000-year-old symbolism that you probably never studied. Right. You were never deliberately taught it. You never deliberately made aware of it. And yet 5,000 years later, you still understand that an owl represents the concept of knowledge. That's how tenacious the symbolism is. So yes, it's going to turn up everywhere. When you're dealing with things like founding fathers of the United States, you see very deliberate use of these symbols. In other contexts, you see the symbols pop up, and it might be unthinking or it might be knowingly.
What now? Let's go back to Göbekli Tepe and Egypt. There's another possibility here, and it's only because it's obvious to me. But geographically, Göbekli Tepe is not that far from Egypt.
Right. One of the meanings of Göbekli Tepe, said there were multiple meanings to these words. One of the translations that is put forward for the name Göbekli Tepe is Central Hill. That's the same translation that goes with the Greek suffix opolis. They tended to put their sanctuaries on top of centralized hills. Göbekli Tepe, if you look at a map, is sitting right in the center point of a number of land masses, and if you follow all of the various civilizing skills that made their first appearance there, follow them genetically and follow them culturally, follow them through language, follow them through architecture, and so forth, they radiate outward from that region, from the Fertile Crescent region, in all directions. This is a central point that at 10,000 BC, it looks as if instruction could have been happening.
Now, we only have a couple of minutes left, and we're going to be jumping into a couple of other areas next. But there is also, how do I say this right? I don't want to sound like a doofus. But there are other basic symbols and symbolism, both with animals and other things, at Göbekli Tepe, that we see all over Egypt, above doorways, part of hieroglyphics. It's right there, and it's almost an exact copy. And we see it, we naturally react to it. Is there a connection there, too, as well?
Yes, but the paths are not straightforward. I see evidence of direct connection at 10,000 BC between Egypt and Göbekli Tepe. There's a path of transmission out of Göbekli Tepe region that passes down through Palestine into Egypt in pre-dynastic times. There's another path that passes down through India and back into Elephantine by about 4,000 BC. And there's a fourth path that makes its way from Göbekli Tepe to northern Scotland and then back to Egypt at around 3,000 BC, just at the start of dynastic Egypt. So you have competing influences from four different paths of transmission that make this stuff difficult.
And again, I keep using the word progenitor, right? But is it important to embrace this concept that it was just one source of information that was spread out from a central point?
Well, I mean, you sort of have to conclude that.
Right.
Because any number of attempts were made back in the 1800s, where some archaeologist would pick a society as his pet culture and then try to demonstrate they were the source of all this, and then illustrate how it got from that culture to all the other ones. And all of those attempts fell on their faces eventually because they would bump up against some contradiction that says that can't possibly be true. What makes sense to me in every way is that there was a cross-regional attempt to instruct different groups in different societies by a single group of very knowledgeable teachers, very skilled teachers, and that the resemblances we're seeing are largely the result of common instruction.
So if we go east of, I've got 2 minutes. Okay. If we stay on that thought, and we go due west of Cairo and into this area, the Dogons, and we go east and north where we have Göbekli Tepe and that area of the Armenian highlands, and centrally located in the middle is Cairo, and of course we have Alexandria, the library, and Hermeticism and the alchemy that spread back out throughout the world. Is this kind of, if we had a flow chart, is that what we should probably look at it as?
I don't place as much emphasis on Egypt. Most of what we recognize as being traditionally ancient Egyptian harkens back nostalgically to things that I connect with Orkney in the centuries just preceding dynastic Egypt. And that all of that comes out of yet another path of transition, which is what I'll be talking about in the upcoming book, how it got from Göbekli Tepe to Orkney.
Orkney Island.
Right.
Wow, that'll be the new tagline at the end of my commercials. Orkney Island.
Yeah.
Our guest tonight, Laird Scranton. I am your host, Jimmy Church. We're going to take a quick break right here. When we come back, we're going to go to the Queen's Chamber and its influence at the Great Pyramid. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
Including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Laird Scranton, night 4 of Egypt Week. For those of you that were stopping by expecting open lines and fader nights, we had to reschedule Laird for tonight because of our technical snafu that went down on Monday. Now, moving on to the Queen's Chamber. Again, I find this so interesting. And what image do you want to start with first?
Well, we'll start with the Queen's Chamber itself, which has connections to chambered cairns in the United Kingdom. And also has connections to root concepts of Buddhism. And Buddhism, these concepts are connected to the notion of a stupa shrine, which is the same class of shrine that I talk about the Dogon having. It's all wrapped up in the idea of separation of earth and sky, and a space being created, a kind of a gateway space being created between non-materiality and materiality. And this corbelled shape that we see in the Queen's Chamber, and especially with the little side chambers you see off them with squared openings and a little bit of a lip up inside the corbelled shape in the Queen's Chamber, are all connected to that kind of a structure. Typically with a Buddhist shrine, or actually most shrines in India, have a central chamber called a garba that repeat the same dynamic. Very often repeat the same shape.
Okay, let's back up for a second here. Let's discuss these definitions when we're talking about the Queen's Chamber. The first shape was what?
The first shape is see the stair steps type shape up in that opening, that niche, that corbelled niche
in the back wall, right?
Right, in the back wall there. That's the central shape. And the perspective is that at some point, this is tricky to explain. With that cycle of energy that runs between universes, it's not just energy, but it's also mass that is carried across from one universe to the other. And Einstein says that when we make a thing more massive, we slow down its time frame, that events occur more slowly in a more massive context.
Mm-hmm.
So we're speeding up time on the non-material side with this energy scrolling, and we're slowing it down on the material side. Now, if you think of the cycle, because the energy flows from one side to the other and then flows back again. This is an oscillation back and forth. But if you think of that cycle, if you compare that cycle to a normal year, you realize that at the center of that cycle, the mass of the two universes equalizes, which means the time frames of the two universes equalize, and it becomes theoretically possible to move from one universe to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the Dogon are saying happened with their teachers, that their teachers were originally non-material, but crossed over into the material domain and educated us. Now, the way they crossed over was through a kind of a gateway, and this corbelled shape is connected to the evocation of that kind of a gateway.
Which was my question. How did they cross over?
Right. Well, what's indicated is that electromagnetic effects were used to open a space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That that concept connects to the root definition of a Buddhist stupa, which is understood to have been raised up from water, basically. It's a concept of the primeval hill or the primordial hill that separates earth from sky. That dynamic of separating earth from sky is, cosmologically, is the definition of the opening of that kind of a gateway between the two domains.
Now, what about the gabled part of the roof?
The gabled part of the roof also actually recreates the interior shape of some of the chambered cairns in the United Kingdom, in Orkney and in the United Kingdom.
Right.
So it looks to me as if there are all sorts of other aspects of Orkney that are being actively recreated in Egypt at about the same period of time. You have a cemetery at Abydos that's overlooking a gap between mountains that is parallel to a mountain gap that's overlooked by major sites on Orkney. As a matter of fact, the name Abydos, according to Om Sete, Abydos was originally pronounced Abdu, and the meaning of it meant the desired mountain. It's specifically named for the mountain that resembles the Orkney Mountains.
You know, when I look at these images of the interior of the Great Pyramid, and that includes the Grand Gallery, but I look at these, and one thing that does not escape my mind: how is it possible that Stone Age man, right, at 2650 BC, right, before the age of anything, right?
Right.
Built this, because it is perfect. It's perfect.
Right. I mean, it certainly is a master work of construction.
It's perfect. I mean, it just defines perfection. It's absolutely incredible. Let's go to image number 2.
Now, image number 2 is just a diagram of what that chamber looks like and how it's arranged. But again, the overall diagram goes along with original concepts of the Buddhist stupa, which evokes that same interior shape inside of a structure inside of a hillside, inside of a hilltop. So all this is to show us how that corbelled niche sits inside the chamber, inside the pyramid, how it's positioned.
Yeah, why is it offset like that? Offset right off of center.
That's a very good question. Why it is set that way? Symbolically, directionality has meaning. Things to the left are non-material, things to the right are material.
Sure.
So if they wanted to indicate that this was a gateway into the material, offsetting it to the right would make sense.
And and this drawing, which is the side view of the Queen's Chamber, also says how. I mean, how? Where does this knowledge come from?
Yes.
I mean, it's insane to me. I love it. I'm perplexed. I so want to know how they figured this out, because if we just go with current timelines here, 300 years before this, we're talking about tribes allegedly gathering from the desert, heading closer to the Nile because that's where the water was, and
right.
Suddenly this stuff just pops up in the desert.
Right, but 300 years before this, people on Orkney were building megalithic structures.
That's right. That's right.
And in that same area, there were megalithic structures being built other places around the world also in eras long before that. I mean, John Anthony West assigns certain structures, even potentially the Sphinx, to prior cycles of this energy, a half cycle back or a full cycle back.
Yeah, and we can't forget about Nabta Playa and
right.
the significance of that too as well, which is something else that just isn't talked about amongst the Egyptologists out there, because it just throws their timeline completely off.
Right, and they don't know who was doing that. The truth is that there were many tribal groups connected to the tradition I'm talking about that seem to have been circulating in those regions. There's a group called the Garamantians who painted images of chariots all over cliff sides in the regions just west of Egypt, between Egypt and Mali,
which were possibly oasis, maybe travel stops, like a truck stop.
Well, sort of, except the paintings often happen in regions where no thinking person believes a chariot ever really went.
Right, or a human walked. Right.
Right.
Exactly. Let's go to image number 3, which is Angkor Wat.
Okay, we can see the roots of the same concepts here. The far right picture that looks like sort of a cathedral type setting is very much the feel you get inside some of the chambered cairns on Orkney. That you crawl into these cairns on hands and knees, or if you're a little shorter, on hands and feet, but you have to be bent over to go down a short entryway to get into the cairn. Once you're inside, then you can stand up, and you have plenty of room, plenty of height for even a tall person to stand inside. But the feel is very much the same as that. So these are just examples of how that same chambered cairn feel was carried forward in other cultures.
And before we go to Orkney, which is the next image, as we're looking at the carryover, obviously starting at Göbekli Tepe and moving along in the timeline, were the same representations, the same commonality with birds, vultures, circles, square, sun, wings, and even the purses, if I can add that too as well. Did they continue around the world, which would suggest maybe a transoceanic transfer of knowledge? But did that carry over too?
Yeah, sure. We see evidence of that pretty much everywhere. I mean, different subsets of this, enough so that Carl Jung noticed archetypes. He defined the concept of archetypes. There's a body of symbolic elements, symbolic themes, mythical themes, artistic representations, words, and so forth that just keep turning up persistently in culture after culture. And you have only a subset in any given culture. I'm trying to work with the ones who did the best job of preserving the whole set.
Let's
substantially whole.
Yeah, let's go to Orkney, and which is image number 4.
Right. This is the Maze Howe chambered cairn. This is sort of the grand master chambered cairn on Orkney. The interior, what it looked like when they first entered inside of it. It has features that are really reminiscent of places like Malta. There's a place called the Hypogeum, Safliene, in Malta, which is the place where they found the statue of the sleeping goddess that's so famous. This precedes the Orkney chambered cairn precedes very similar beehive-shaped tombs that were built all over the Aegean in eras following Orkney, but this was the earliest. And it recreates a lot of the same features that were in the other chambered cairns.
Yeah, well, I see the roof too and the step, obviously for relieving weight, but the design, is it possible? Okay, let's go outside of the box for a second, Laird. Is it possible that this engineering knowledge of stepping a ceiling like this with stone rafters, these concepts, also doorways and windows and things, entrances, that this is in our DNA? You know what I mean? Because these same concepts popped up all around the world. It can't be that everybody had independent thought but came up with the same ideas.
Right, and we can show that that's not the case. Imagine a culture that builds only from stone. It's only a matter of time before they're going to think to stack those stones up in the form of a pyramid, because there are only so many things you can do with stone. So eventually they're going to build a pyramid. So the idea of constructing a pyramid might be parallel development. It would be very easy to argue that. The problem is that there's very complicated symbolism that goes along with that form all over the world when we see pyramids. The same representations that have nothing to do with stacking up stones, they all thought to associate symbolism with it that matches, and that's the piece that argues that they all got it from a common source.
Yeah, when you look, not only, I mean, the obvious things, which is Guatemala, right, Belize, Mexico, throughout Central and South America, and you look at those pyramids, and not only the pyramids themselves, but the way that they were constructed and the symbolism at the top of these temples, the three doorways and things that happened all around the world at the same time.
Right.
I wanted to jump back. We skipped over this when we were talking about the purses. Let's talk about Sumerian and the Anunnaki and the way that deliberately carved and preserved the different gods and the different kings, all carrying purses that are identical to Göbekli Tepe, and also seen in Egypt and around the world. Same symbolism there in what is being carried by the gods and kings in Mesopotamia?
Right. Well, yes. But if we understand that basket is a symbol for the bringing of knowledge,
right,
then the figure of a deity carrying the basket identifies them as the bringer of knowledge.
Right. So again, it's the same thing is
right.
What I'm getting
right.
at here.
And yep, we see it all over the place in very similar form. Also in the left hand, very often, at least in the Near East, you see them holding a pomegranate, or what's interpreted to be a pomegranate, in the left-hand side, which is a symbol for multiplicity. And that's the dynamic of non-materiality to materiality, is unity to multiplicity.
Now, I'm going to change subjects a little bit, not really, but when we look at the different winged features above the doorways throughout Egypt, the same representation, nearly identical, whether you want to say it's Isis or how you want to represent it in Egypt, but we see that in Mesopotamia too as well, nearly identical.
Right. Well, let's if we can move back to the Göbekli Tepe image in the first set, the second, what I called AO2 image.
Right.
Okay, we were talking about the vulture at the bottom with the ball on its wing.
That's right.
The symbolism there, as I understand it, it has to do with expressing the concept of an equinox, or of a solstice. That's the sun out on the edge of the wing is a way of representing the idea of the solstice. And in fact, the little teepee-shaped marks you see above that ball, you find repeated, etched into a stone at Skara Brae, might well be a method of counting the days or weeks, whatever the period of time that passes between solstices or between equinoxes and solstices.
And the same, without pulling up images here to describe, we see the same sun and wings once again in Mesopotamia and Egypt, and we all see them. Why would they have it at the top of doorways?
Okay, so this brings us to the third set of images that I sent you,
okay,
which relate to the concept of what the Egyptians called an Akhet. The first of this next set is the Egyptian Akhet glyph. And what it's interpreted to represent is the sun either rising or setting between two mountains. Now, the word Akhet combines two phonetic values, two Egyptian words. Ak is a word for light, and Het is a word for sanctuary. So, a shrine or a sanctuary. So the Akhet automatically, phonetically, it inherently defines the concept of a light shrine, a light sanctuary. Now that's very similar to the concept that we saw at Göbekli Tepe, where there are multiple representations of non-material and material energies coming together. This is just another way of representing it. But the figure, again, has meaning on two levels. It's cosmological on one level, but the Dogon say they were instructed in a civilizing plan whose main focus was on agriculture, and that was tagged very closely, very intimately to a symbolic cosmology. So the same symbol has significance for agriculture. The significance is that ancient cultures needed to know when to plant their crops. They needed to know when to plant and when to harvest. And it's important, if you do it at the wrong time, if you do it at the right time, you get a much better result than if you do it at the wrong time. And so trying to have some sort of visibility on the seasons of the year was important for that process to work out the way that it should. And so the Akhet was connected to that. It was a way of giving visibility to that. If we go to the second image, we'll see a picture of Elephantine. This is a mountain that can be viewed from Elephantine Island in the south of Egypt. Around 4000 BC is when Elephantine became significant. This photo was connected with a caption by the person who posted it, who lives in Elephantine, and they commented, "We can tell by the position of the sun that summer's about to start." They use that mountain with the gap, sort of the gap in between two mountains, as a way of gauging where the sun is, where the seasonality is. As the sun moves back and forth and through that gap, they have visibility on where they are in the calendar year.
And it looks just like the Akhet glyph.
Right, it looks just like the Akhet glyph. That's 4000 BC. Now, with the next picture, this is around 3200 BC on Orkney. We have what I consider to be the probably the purest representation of the Akhet glyph. Now, the Akhet glyph didn't come about until after Orkney. So because so many other elements in ancient Egypt at around 3000 BC reflect things on Orkney, my impulse is to say that the Akhet glyph does too. Now, the cosmological import of this is very, very significant. This goes to the heart of geometry that the Buddhists use to align shrines. It goes to the heart of concepts of the cosmology. The idea is, we talked about trying to reconcile non-materiality with materiality, talking about reconciling a circle with a square. Well, more fundamentally, what we're trying to reconcile is modes of time between those two domains, because time is not experienced the same way. We experience time linearly, and that's we can think of that in terms of, the sun rising in the morning and setting in the evening, east and west, is a linear representation of time. That's the dynamic that causes a sundial to work and gives us visibility on time during the day.
Right.
Okay, so this sunset on Orkney, which can be seen from major megalithic sites on Orkney, they're overlooking this. You can observe the linear motion of time following the sun as it sets through between those mountains. However, the side-by-side motion, which is seasonal, is the second dynamic of time that the Dogon associate with non-materiality. And so that shape, that Akhet shape, automatically reconciles two modes of time.
Left and right, left and right, seasonal change, December, winter solstice, all happens, right? Yeah.
Right. Now, the point at which the two modes of energy between the two universes is most direct and least impeded is at the equinox. Well, what I pictured here on Orkney is the sun setting on the equinox. And the place it's viewed from is a pillar on Orkney called the Watchstone. It's the place where you stood to watch the sun.
Incredible. And so on the day before, the sun is in the opposite direction. It is still moving to the right. And the day after, from that pillar, we're going to see the sun moving back to the left for the first time.
Well, it's a very, very slow progression across, but by the winter equinox, you have it, the winter solstice, you have the sun setting over the leftmost mountain.
Right.
And actually it sets over the leftmost mountain, and you can just see the tip of it down in the left corner of that central cavity.
Right.
There's on the winter solstice, that's you can observe the sun there. Same thing on the other side with the summer solstice. So you get direct visibility on that process cosmologically and for purposes of agriculture using that mountain. Now in Hinduism, they flatly say that their important sites were deliberately situated in view of mountains that resemble these. They relate the mountains to elephants, and the elephants are connected with the elephant god Ganesha. And I can cite you any number of places where this relationship between sun and mountain works the same way. It happens at Abydos in Egypt at 3000 BC, or just after 3000 BC, when Akhenaten, 1,500 years later, reestablished his capital city at Akhetaten, which was up the Nile River, south on the Nile River from where Abydos is. He deliberately set it with pillars to observe the same function of the sun, only at sunrise rather than sunset. But from that pillar, you can observe exactly the same functions of the sun, moving left and right and setting in the center at the equinox.
Absolutely fascinating. It's fascinating. We've got these two images here. I'm going to post them up during the break, and we'll actually take our break here. When we come back, I'll show everybody sunrise from Akhenaten and also the solstice sunset over Giza, which is absolutely fascinating as well. Stay right there, Laird. Let's take our break. This is Fade to Black. It is night 4 of Egypt Week here on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter. All of the images we are discussing are at hashtag F2B. Stay with us. More with Laird after this short break.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to GetTheT.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's GetTheT.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
Let's face it, you've always wanted to do a sky watch and see your first UFO. Today, it's easy. Just get your own HP7 3B Cobalt Jimmy Church Edition night vision goggles from Hoffman's Optics. This is the same U.S. military system that I use, featuring a Generation 3 blue phosphor image tube. That's right, it's blue, not black and green. This is the only blue system in the world, and it's waterproof, lightweight, combat-proof, simple to use, and ready to go. Hoffman's Optics help create night vision sky watches, and now you can see what everyone has been talking about each night from your own backyard. Just call 760-231-9929. That's 760-231-9929. You can click on the banners on our site or visit UFONightVisionGoggles.com. That's UFONightVisionGoggles.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, night 4 of Egypt Week here on Fade to Black, our last segment with Laird Scranton. And I just posted up in Twitter the last two images. One of, how did Akhenaten say the name of his city?
Akhetaten.
Akhetaten.
Right. So it's based on the concept of the Akhet. It's situated overlooking two hills, two mountains. Actually, we have that's the next photo, the fourth photo in that C series, is the view from his capital city of the sun on the winter solstice.
That is the Akhet glyph.
Right.
That is the Akhet glyph. You can't mistake it.
Right. And he deliberately positioned the city to overlook that. He set pillars up to be able to track it. The idea, and any number of ancient cultures use the same technique in connection with agriculture and connection with cosmology, and it's either framed in terms of two mountains or two hills like that with a gap in between, or it's framed over the top of one hill that looks like a reclining elephant, and so they can watch the sun move across the back of the elephant. But it's all elephant symbolism that connects into Hinduism and Ganesha, and with a lot of similar symbolism. We see on the picture here of Akhenaten, the focus of his revised religion was on the motions of the sun.
The last image, which is solstice, sunset over Giza, it's about as dramatic as it gets, isn't it?
Right. So someone had positioned things also there to be able to see sunset over, marking it against the back of the Sphinx in the same way as it's being marked over the mountains at Elephantine. It's a way of tracking where you are in the year, and because it has particular cosmological significance. That's why the equinox is so important to holidays in various traditions. In Judaism, the fall equinox is associated with Passover. Passover is the name of the holiday conveys the idea of the ability to be able to cross over between non-materiality and materiality. In Egypt, the word for the equinox was Keper. Keper is the dung beetle, whose symbolism is non-existence coming into existence. A traditional Passover Seder ends with the participants opening a door to the outside to allow a non-material entity named Eliyahu to enter. So the Jews were actually acting it out every Passover. What the Dogoners say happened, that non-material entity came into materiality and interacted.
Does the same Akhet glyph, is it occurring in Luxor? Is it occurring in Edfu? Does it happen in Karnak, Abydos, other temples throughout Egypt?
I don't know where it's primarily celebrated. I know that Abydos, which was the very early center in dynastic Egypt, expressly situated itself to be in view of those mountains.
So, such a fascinating form of symbolism. What do we do with Ra and the sun throughout the world?
Ra is, let's back up a little bit. We're talking about icons for non-materiality and materiality.
That's right.
One of the metaphors is that the bright star Sirius becomes an icon for non-materiality, and the sun becomes an icon for materiality. The sun as Ra, or in other cultures, the sun becomes, ancient Chinese culture, for example, the sun became an icon for materiality. Now, in these cultures, the year began. New Year's Day was the day when Sirius and the sun were closest to each other. The way the dynamics of our orbit work, there's a period of time where we can't see Sirius because it's hidden by the glare of our sun. It's situated within the sphere of where the glare of that sun hides it from us. And then suddenly on that New Year's Day, the sun, Sirius is seen to rise just before the sunset, or before the sunrise. It's called the heliacal rising of Sirius. And the Dogon refer to that as Sirius meets the sun. But the reason it's significant is because it represents that same concept of the point at which non-materiality and materiality are most connected, where they come together.
The other part of that, and what I'm getting at directly here, is that the sun represented safety, I guess you could say, right? Now we're in daylight, right? You don't have the creatures of the night. You're not going to get it, and the things that night represented, an unsafe area. But the rising of the sun, everything is we're back to normality, right?
Right, back to materiality. Night is symbolic of non-material. Daytime symbolic of materiality. Now, there's a difference in the way we judge time between day and night too. Anciently, I mean, in the daytime you use a sundial, which marks off in sort of little increments like a clock does, the shadows being passed by the gnomon in the center of the sundial. At night, the way they told time was they conceptualized groups of stars as constellations that were spaced about 1,000 miles apart, about an hour apart from each other in terms of how they rose above the horizon at night. And so when you saw Orion rise above the horizon, you knew what time it was. This is a clock that was tracking hours at night. The Dogons say that time in a material sense represents a glimpse, and in the non-material sense represents a glance. It's a bigger bigger chunk of time that's experienced in the same moment. That goes back to what I was talking about with if there were non-material influences on those stones, that it's thinkable that they took the smallest chunk they could take, and at that period of time, the smallest chunk was 700 tons.
The Dogon didn't have a written language.
They deliberately don't have a written language because they see written language essentially as being a security breach waiting to happen. That when you're communicating orally with somebody, you have control over who hears what and who's privy to what. As soon as you write it down, you don't. Also, these are complicated subjects, and when you have someone who understands, has an overview of the subject, then you can ask for clarification on the points you don't get. If it's written down, it's subject to misinterpretation and misunderstanding. And so the cultures that did the best job of carrying this material forward, in my experience, are the ones who never adopted written language.
But the Dogon did have icons. They
have drawings. They had cosmological drawings. So when they're talking about the action of electrons, they support that with a drawing that looks for all the world like an electron orbital shape.
And I've seen this, and I've seen and listened to your explanation of this, but the somebody like me that is the first thing is, how could they possibly know about the quantum? How can they even come close to these concepts that not only you can't see, but today physicists represent all of this with drawings and numbers. They can't see these things either. How is it possible that the Dogon had this information and were able to represent it with symbols?
Well, the Dogon and the Buddhists flatly tell us. They say, look, back in ancient times, somebody who thoroughly understood all this stuff explained it to us.
Well, take that further, Laird.
The problem, as I said, the inherent problem we have is we have no credible candidates for who those teachers might have been. But if you look at what the symbolism represents, starting with what the ancient cultures themselves say this is what it represents, and they're saying it represents science, they're saying it represents the equivalent of an atom, the equivalent of an electron, the equivalent of smaller particles than that, the equivalent of concepts of energy and so forth. When you take what they say at face value and you start to test, could there be a scientific basis to this, you find there absolutely is. Their descriptions are absolutely scientific, and the drawings they use to support the descriptions are absolutely scientific. They have it right on the nose, and they even carry it further than the scientists do. I mean, it goes for the Dogon, it goes down to one of the things I'm working on. It'll be the subject of the, not the book I'm planning to publish at the end of this year, but one beyond that, deals with what energies look like at the very bottom of the structure, where it starts out, how you get from a domain of strictly energy to what we see right now.
The symbolism that we are referring to at the quantum level, atomic structure, also rolled over into Egypt and hieroglyphs, didn't it?
Right. The Egyptian hieroglyphic language is based on all those same concepts and symbols. The Dogon cosmological words are very often ancient Egyptian cosmological words, carrying the same clusters of meanings, using the same shape drawing to represent it, and you can use one to cross-check the other. And the hieroglyphs have the advantage that each word explains its own meaning to us. We don't have to guess. We can look at the glyphs used to write the word, and they've told us flat out what the nuances of meaning are they're trying to express.
Well, we know that there wasn't an ocean in between the Dogon and Egypt, but it's still a heck of a walk. And not to make light of it, but how do you suppose that the communication went between the Dogon and the Egyptians? And what time are we talking about here?
The dynamic, as I see it, begins at Göbekli Tepe when we have an era of instruction where any number of regional groups were instructed in this symbolic tradition. Now, some 6,000 years later, there's a second round of instruction that happens on Orkney Island. And for that round of instruction, it looks as if the Dogon were among a tribal group that had done a particularly good job of preserving that original instruction. And so they were enlisted as essentially adjunct professors or assistant professors to be the intermediaries to talk with new initiates, to explain this stuff to new initiates, and that every time you had a graduating class of initiates, they'd go back to where they came from, and one or more of the Africans would go with them, serve as priests or to serve as initially as rulers, to help make sure that the civilized structure of society got set up properly in whatever that new location was.
Yeah, are you suggesting that the Dogon traveled from northern Africa to Orkney Island?
Okay, if our understanding is that somebody in those eras was talking about how energy turns into matter, then getting around the planet clearly was not a problem.
Right. Right. So at some point you have to come face to face, right? I mean, at some point, teacher and student have to get together and exchange ideas.
Right. Now, that was the rationale for conducting the instruction in a remote location. That, okay, you've read the biblical passages about Moses on the mountain with the tablets.
Sure.
And the Israelites down at the base of the mountain and being cautioned against coming too close to the mountain because of bad effects that could accrue to them if they get too close.
Going to get
sick.
Right.
The Dogon say their non-material teachers were concerned about that same effect on us. And the way they limited it was they took 8 students at a time from a tribal group, sequestered them in a remote location, used the African initiates, previous initiates, as teachers, intermediary teachers to limit the direct contact with the non-material teachers, and circumvented the problems that way, that had the very minimum amount of contact between the direct contact between the non-material and the material people.
So the Dogon, and we all know what the Dogon look like, very unique tribe for sure. And I would say the coolest of all African tribes. But am I understanding you correctly that the Dogon, however they traveled to Orkney Island, 8 of them, in looking like Dogon, right? I mean, the Dogon, as they am I picking this up right?
Right. Well, they've done DNA studies on Orkney, and were flabbergasted to find out that Orkney is one of the most unexpectedly diverse genetic places on the planet for reasons they can't explain. And among that DNA, 1% of modern men who have lived their entire lives on Orkney, who are native Orcadians, carry a Y haplogroup, which is what connects the Dogon to the Egyptians and to the Berbers and to other groups in North Africa.
Wow, that's extraordinary. And so the same travel, because we're talking about a great amount of time ago with Göbekli Tepe, when we're going back 10 or 12,000 years. That's a long time ago. And that the Dogon did the same mode of travel at that time period, 10,000, 12,000 BC, and traveled from North Africa up to the Armenian highlands where Göbekli Tepe is located today on the Syrian border.
Right, but with the aid of the same people who are teaching them about cosmological science.
Right, and what do you think? How do you think the travel happened? Were they dematerializing, or right, or was there actual physical travel involved?
Well,
flying, for instance.
A lot of these groups are very skilled seafaring groups, and we see even there are associations between Orkney and the Egyptian field of reeds, the underworld, the place where the soul of a deceased person supposedly went when they died. The Egyptians say that the soul gets there traveling by boat.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the Egyptians had ocean-capable boats. It's not unthinkable that a boat travels up the Nile, out into the Mediterranean, out the Pillars of Gibraltar, and up the coastline to Britain and to Orkney.
Well, we have to start to accept a few things. And certainly one of them, again, there is an obvious central point. I don't know if right now it's Göbekli Tepe. I don't know if we're going to find something else, maybe on the opposite sides of the earth, that is older than Göbekli Tepe and more extraordinary and more, larger and so forth. We found evidence of a few different sites like this that are possible. But the communication has to have happened, right, between these different cultures. And how did they pull it off? We have to start looking at alternative ways with this instead of which skeptics out there are just going to say, well, you know what, it just happened. It just happened. We don't know how it happened, but it happened. It wasn't anything extraordinary. Right? There wasn't some technically advanced culture out there. This communication happened somehow, but we don't know how. But it wasn't anything that was unbelievable or science fiction.
Well, if we understand that a lot of the UFO encounters that have been reported, we've had psychologists who study individual witness cases and abduction cases and so forth with UFOs, who report consistent sets of things that happen in certain ways, and the images that they're conveying to these psychologists are the same, play out in terms of the same symbolism as the tradition that I'm exploring again and again and again and again. So we see with UFO reports what looks for all the world like dimensional effects, that the way a UFO moves is not in keeping with how physics works as far as we're concerned.
That's right.
They're able. Okay, so if we imagine that a similar kind of inter-universe or interdimensional sort of group was responsible for this instruction, we see what the potential is for ability to travel.
Well, and we have to, again, I keep going back to the same point. We have to start thinking in terms of not only outside of the box, but what were the ancients constantly telling us over and over again from any part of the globe? Right, we were taught from angels. We were taught from the stars. We were taught from, right? Our knowledge came from up there. The design of this came from up there. What's the up there? I don't know.
I was, for one of the manuscripts I've been working on, I came across an article by an academic researcher in the Near East, and he said literally every ancient group that he knows of makes explicit claims for instruction in ancient times by somebody more capable than themselves. And then he goes on to say, and it's long past time we set all that nonsense aside. And I thought, here you have consistent testimony from every group, and you decide that's grounds to dismiss it, not to consider it?
Right, exactly. And when I was very young, I would I think most this was in the 60s. Most kids in the United States did this in schools across the country. Go to the library, put on headphones, and we'd listen to stories being told, and with a picture book. And a lot of these were biblical stories. And when it came to Moses and the communication, and I would always picture this in my mind, I didn't picture angels or the voice of God. I didn't. I always thought E.T. I always had a different way of looking at it. Only now with Ancient Aliens or the conversations, where this has become a bit more pop culture. But that's the way I pictured it growing up. But yet nobody from the academic field wants to consider this. But when you look at it in its most elemental, broken down form, that's what was going on, Laird.
Right. I mean, there's every reason to at least entertain the idea that that's what was going on and see where it leads. And that's where I see academics traditionally falling down, is not even being willing to entertain the idea, because their impression from the outset is it won't lead any place that they can endorse.
Are the Dogon the only one that didn't call their teachers angels?
The Dogon had the presence of mind, to ask their teachers if they were God. And the teachers said, no, we're not God, but if it makes you feel better, or if it helps you to think of us as agents of God, then that's fine. You can think of us that way.
How are the Dogon doing today?
Dogon are doing great. There are about 300,000 Dogon tribespeople who live in villages all along a remote area of Mali, towards the south of Mali, mostly along an escarpment called the Bandiagara escarpment. They eke out a living as onion farmers and as artists, and have it as a societal imperative to preserve these words and symbols in original form.
So the same oral traditions continue.
Yes, there's the pressure of encroaching, Western type society.
Sure.
Which I'm sure becomes more and more of a difficulty for them, because they do interact with people of more Western civilized perspectives. But the tribal imperative is preserve this stuff.
Laird, thank you so much, and give my best to Risa. She's the best, man.
I will. Thank you very much.
She keeps you in line, and I look forward. Keep us posted, okay? And,
okay.
And eventually, we're going to get behind this crazy year of 2020, and
Yes.
we're going to have a rockin' 2021. Thank you so much, Laird.
Thanks a lot, Jimmy.
You're the best. Laird Scranton and InnerTraditions.com. We've got the links for all of Laird's books right there over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Laird Scranton, what an incredible conversation. And not to let Fader Night go. Okay, so for all of you out there, I will open up the phone line. 747-228-2051. We'll get a quick taste of Fader Night when we come back after this short break. Stay with me.
Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I'm a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to forbiddenknowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, forbiddenknowledge.tv. Again, visit forbiddenknowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JamieChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black, our last night of the week. Egypt week, night 4, Laird Scranton. Incredible conversation. All right, I just sat down and I noticed that I had the phones all shut off and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 missed calls. I apologize for that. It is now open. Phone lines are open. 747-228-2051. I apologize for that. It's just, I'm not thinking. But 747-228-2051. Egypt, for me, is the one thing that's in front of us where we can go, we can visit, we can study, we can see what is built. We know that it is there. We know this. Other questions, going back 100,000 years, 200,000 years, the beginning of Homo sapiens sapien and all of these things, we can't go and visit those sites. Or if there were any, we can't do that. Egypt is right there. And even if we go with Mesopotamia and ancient Sumer and the devastation that has happened with Iraq and the wars and war that continues to happen over there, some of those sites were preserved, sure, right? They weren't bombed. But it's not a place where we can just go and visit. Egypt, we can. It's a different situation. Egypt, because of not only the different Persian kings and, of course, Greek and Rome going in and documenting, and Plato and Herodotus and the documentation that is there. But then we have later things like the French and Napoleon and the different British archaeologists that were going down, adventurers, and Italy and the Italians that were going in modern times throughout the 1800s through the early 1900s that were traveling to Egypt. It was right there in front of us. It's right there. It is a different situation, different than anything else on this planet. And the reasons why I say that, in my opening statements today, talking about Greece, and so many people go, well, yeah, it's Egypt, then Greece, then Rome, and then, humanity happened. Greece was 2,000 years after, right? We're talking about a huge amount of time. We can go to Athens right now. Yes, and I get that. We can go there. We can go to Rome, and we can see the sites, and we can see the thing. We can go to the Senate. You can go to the Colosseum. You can go and see these sites. That's modern history. As old as it is, it's still only 2,000 years old or less. That's modern history. It's modern. Egypt is a different situation where these sites and these temples are spread out all over Egypt going back 3,000 years, 2,700 years, 2,600 years, if you follow the timeline by Egyptologists. And the decline happened at around 1500 BC. But there is a 1,500-year period of magic. It's crazy to me. Crazy. All right. Taking your phone call, 747-228-2051. Where are the phones? 747-228-2051. And when I don't see the phone lines lighting up, I'm wondering if it's me. 747-228-2051. This is our last chance for Fader Night, Thursday night before we head into the weekend. 747-228-2051. I want to go back before the phone calls start coming in. I want to go back to this point that I was making at the very beginning of the show, that every time I go through an Egypt week here on Fade to Black, I come back to the same thought every single time. What if Egypt continued? What if Egypt continued? There's evidence if we go to some of the things like, and I'm being very serious about this, not only the Baghdad battery, but I think there is evidence of electroplating going on, that there is a knowledge of, right, and what the pyramids may be used for, but an advanced technology there. It seems to have happened. So when I say that today, right now, we are on the brink of some very big things. We can study the stars and the universe and down to quantum physics and what is going on at the very smallest matter and particles. We are on the very brink of that, of anti-aging and diseases and health and science and not only with biology and chemistry, but with energy systems and things. We are right on the brink of understanding these things right now. Egypt was in the same position. And I can say that because our section of knowledge, modern science, isn't but 300 years old. And when you go back to the Renaissance, to the 1400s and the 1500s, that's 500 years ago. Galileo and Copernicus and Da Vinci and these things that were happening during the Renaissance. A great time to be sure, but it wasn't until Isaac Newton and those ideas of physics and gravity where modern science started. And then we've got to push everything up to today. And that is the last 200 years, the last 150 years. Right? That Egypt was in that same position at 1500 BC, the same position we are at now. And when I have these conversations with people and they immediately go, how can you say that? Because we did so much. No, I can say that because 100 years ago, 120 years ago, 1900, 120 years ago, horses and covered wagons. Horses and covered wagons. 150 years ago, it was still candles. Our big achievement was fire and the steam engine and locomotives and trains. You know what? Greece had the steam engine. They had that at 500 BC. They were. I'm serious about this. The concepts of electricity and steam engines and propulsion and all of they were already happening back then. We happened to hit this magical period of the last 300 years where we made these grand advances. But Egypt was right there too. Handed off to Greece and handed off to Rome and some of these things in mechanics and gears, clocks, time. All of this was handed off. These concepts, calendars and time and things, they were already there. Math and chemistry, they were already there. Metallurgy. Look at what Egypt was doing when it came to metals. Look what they did with gold. All of this was already happening. So yes, I just often wonder what would have happened if Egypt wasn't invaded time after time again, where their progress into these concepts, because they allowed their brain to run free for 1,500 years. One of the things with Akhenaten, up to that point, Egypt's society was based on was not based on war, was not based on invasion. It was based on the self and growing as a person, artistically, mathematically, as a government, with religions, but making society better. They weren't worried about invading another country and building up huge armies and wasting time and effort and money on that. They were not. They were not. It was a different thing. And if they hadn't been invaded, the misdirection of their growth wouldn't have happened, and they would have stayed right there. So yes, what would have happened if Egypt wasn't invaded? The decline happened at 1500 BC. The other argument that is there, which I don't understand, and I keep hearing it time and time again, which is the thing that is ignored, is that what we have here, Mesopotamia was different. It was different. There was a crossroads there where there was a lot of different cultures coming through, a lot of trade, a lot of different ideas. Egypt was on its own. Egypt was completely singular out there, the Sahara Desert. Egypt was on its own. And suddenly, out of the desert, we had a complete society. And I'm talking about the concept of governments, of agriculture, of religion, of schools, of law, chemistry, science, math, the building of roads, engineering. Everything was right there overnight. Overnight. And that is ignored. It's just like, well, it happened. It happened. That is what an Egyptologist is going to say. That is what a historian is going to say. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay, I hear you, but it just happened. No. It had to have been taught and came from somewhere. There is no other way to look at it. And that's why Laird's research is so important. So I keep driving this home, but after a week of shows like this, I come right back to the same point every time. Let's go to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hello.
Yes, you're live.
Oh, hello. My name is Casey. How are you?
Hi, Casey. Where are you calling from?
Virginia.
All right. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, I really enjoyed Laird Scranton. I have his books, and I didn't realize one of them was a textbook. And when I was going through it, it was like, wow, this thing really reads like a textbook.
That's right. That's right.
Very, very silly.
What'd you think of the conversation tonight?
Oh, it was really great. I would have liked to. I'm more on the technical side, where I got into his book about the part of where the symbols have multiple meanings, and that you can have a top level meaning, but then you can go deep and really go into a scientific explanation of different types of atoms and matter, and more how it works underneath.
Yeah, that's one of the things I appreciate so much about Laird. We can, and there's nothing, we have to listen to everybody, right? And I appreciate other researchers and how they approach things, but I like the science part, like you, right? And I get that from Laird. He is able to go in that direction, and he's one of the few researchers out there that chooses to go directly at the hard science. And one of the reasons why, Casey, is tackling a subject like the Dogon understood atoms and particles at the quantum level. Well, you know what? That's a bold thing to say, but Laird is not scared of the challenge because that's where the research has taken him, and he will continue to do that.
Oh yeah, so I'm looking forward to his next book. As a matter of fact, I have to go back and repurchase his other books because I lost them when I moved.
Well, let me ask you.
I couldn't. It was so frustrating. I couldn't even go back and open the books and look up some of these things when he was talking.
Well, let me ask you this: Are you okay with this type of discussion where there was probably one central point of knowledge and teacher, and then everything funneled down from there? And he keeps going back to Göbekli Tepe, and I think there's a lot to be said about that. But are you okay with that there was one teacher, and then that trickled down through the different cultures throughout the world?
Yeah, I think so, because these concepts keep surfacing again and again, and then we as humans backslide. And then again, once again, these mystery schools pop up all over the world, and they all have a consistent knowledge in each of those mystery schools. They might be, they're geared toward each culture that they're in, but the message is the same.
Where do you think we would be today if Egypt was allowed to have continued on their just amazing journey, and they were able to grow after 1500 BC instead of the decline?
Well, if we did not have the decline, if those good days were there, then we, as a planet, we would have ascended by now.
You think so? I
and
do.
We wouldn't even be here. We would be on the next higher plane of existence.
Yeah, we would be somewhere colonizing the Milky Way right now, consciously. Thank you so much, Casey, and don't be a stranger. I really like first-time callers.
Yeah, that was my first-time caller, yep.
Have a great night, and Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you. That's Casey from Virginia. I have followed Laird now. I have followed Laird since the early 2000s, maybe late 1990s. And I just appreciate the way that he approaches all of this. Casey's absolutely right. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. How's it going?
It's going good. Who's this?
This is Jack from. I'm from Galveston.
From Galveston, Texas?
Yes, sir.
What's on your mind tonight, Jack?
Well, I have an interesting story real quick to tell you. So, and I checked Twitter to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me, but I saw the craziest green discs just fly across the sky. And the reason why I wanted to call is because I've actually seen a green fireball before, like the asteroids shoots across the sky.
Yes.
This was unlike meteors, shooting stars, anything, and I'm just stunned.
What, you're saying this was on Twitter tonight?
I just saw it with my own eyes.
Oh.
I checked Twitter to make sure.
Oh, I got
you.
you.
The only one.
Oh, really? Okay, I haven't. And you saw this in Galveston. What time?
About 5 minutes ago.
Oh, 5 minutes ago. So around. Are you guys central in Texas, in Galveston?
Yeah, central. I don't want to take up all of the rest of the show. I figured maybe, hopefully something will come out of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's why you called in, Jack. So everybody out there in the central part of the country, and certainly Texas, did you see anything in the skies about 5 minutes ago, which would have been 11:45, about 11:45, right, Jack?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you for the phone call, Jack. Behave and be well, and go Beckley
Have a great
Tepe.
night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. So a green disc was just sighted over Galveston, Texas at 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes before midnight. It's 9:50 here in Los Angeles, in Burbank. Did anybody see anything over Galveston, Texas? And now Jack describes it as a green disc over Galveston. Absolutely incredible. That's, this is the thing. I know how many people are listening to the show from Texas right now, probably inside and not outside. But if you did see anything and you're listening to this show later, shoot me an email. If you took a picture, shoot me an email, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I definitely want to hear from you. Thank you for the phone call, Jack. Wow. Okay, so it's 9:50, and he said it's about 7 minutes ago. So again, about 11:40 to 11:43 p.m. in Galveston, Texas. Did anybody see anything there? Okay, 747-228-2051. I've got time for one more phone call before the end of the night. Now, okay, so next week here on Fade to Black, we're going UFOs. We're going ET all week next week on Fade to Black. So you're not going to want to miss that. And it's going to be pretty incredible Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday here on the show. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. It's Laura calling from South Dakota.
Hi, Laura from South Dakota. How are you?
Really good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's Thursday night, good. Laird Scranton, Egypt week. It's all good. What's on your mind, Laura?
Well, he was terrific. I always love to hear Laird. And I was really interested in his description of the bags, the purses that he, that are on the columns at Göbekli Tepe.
Right.
The fact that the square indicates material growth. Is that? I wanted to get your take on it.
I see. This is the thing, and this is really the bottom line. We all perceive things differently. Our brain makes the connection. We have, and certainly women, right? You grow up with purses, so you have immediately your brain is going to make an association to something when you see it visually, right? It's just the way it is. You don't even have to know it's called a purse, but visually you're going to make the connection to it, right? And that's it. I'm the same way. This is a modern society that we are in. So when I see the different Sumerian gods in Mesopotamia all carrying purses, it makes you think of something. Briefcases with men, spies, workers going to work at IBM carrying their briefcases, and engineers and things. The president with his nuclear briefcase, right? We see this same thing over and over again. Well, when Göbekli Tepe started to surface, and I'm looking at all of these images, the first thing that popped into my head is that those are purses. They are not purses, right? Briefcases, but something to carry something in. When Laird then suggests, well, now look at the Seh in Egypt and look at the temple, portable temple too, by the way. That was the key thing, right? It's a portable temple. It's made out of wicker. It's not necessarily stone. And this goes back to 3000 BC or before. And you look at that and you're like, wait a minute. Aha. Could that be the same thing? But are they representing the same thing? Right? A purse, a briefcase carrying knowledge, the nuclear secrets, right? Carrying knowledge. Kings traveling between kingdoms, carrying knowledge to another kingdom, maybe. Right?
Yes, it's almost reminiscent of the story of the kings from the Orient, bearing gifts.
That's right.
Same type of
thing.
And then if you look at that, Jim, and you think about that, that shape, if he's right about that symbolism, that square shape then ties those men to the world, to the material world, and not necessarily to the spiritual world, which he is, I'm inclined to hear, or after listening to him, he's saying that the round shape has more to do with the spiritual.
Yeah, the non-material.
I don't know. Yeah, the non-material. I just thought it was really fascinating, that study he's made of that symbology.
Yeah, and you know what I've said? I've said this to Laird directly. I don't know how he manages to walk down a street, because he's going to look at everything, right? He's going to look at things different. Yeah, and a car drives by him, and the car tires remind him of a non-materialistic connection, and the car is connecting to the material. He thinks differently. Right? How does he manage to get through the day? I don't know.
I really don't.
I don't either.
And then, your idea about what would we be today, or what, if Egypt had continued. Don't you think they were, it's almost as if their knowledge was destroyed because it was too advanced.
I know. You can't escape that. Yeah, you can't escape that.
Burned. Why would the Romans burn the great library at Alexandria? Why would they do that? Why? Because, that was a society that was learned in their own way. They had many, I can't think of an example, but like Seneca, for example.
Yes, that's right. Yes. No,
yeah, very. And so why would they do that unless there was something that was either so heretical or so dangerous, or I don't know.
Well, people don't like, especially other countries, they don't want people to be free, right? And Alexandria, it was like, okay, the doors are open here. Come on, China. Come on, Greece. Come on, everybody's welcome here. Let's share our knowledge. Let's write it down, and let's teach each other. There's a lot of people out there that don't like that. They don't. They want the knowledge to themselves, and they don't want a free-thinking society like that, because look where it got Egypt. It got them to an unbelievable magical spot and getting ready to just take off. Man, they were close, too. I'm telling you, they went to the edge of the cliff and took a peek. They saw the future. They did. They were right there. Laura, thank you so much, and enjoy your weekend, and go Beckley Tepe. Thank you for the phone call.
Rock and roll.
You got it. Go Beckley Tepe. Yeah, thank you, Laura. Great phone call right there. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. I want everybody to have a great, safe, fun, and amazing weekend. We're going to be working on the H Factor all weekend to bring you the next episodes on Sunday evening. All right, so everybody be cool, be fun, have a great, safe weekend. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intros, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Everybody have a great weekend. Be safe. I'll see you on Monday. It's UFO week. Be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.